23 draft, we have confirmed Bryce Young will be starting week 1. We have CJ Stroud just being announced the starter for the Houston Texans. We also have Anthony Richardson, officially the starter in Indianapolis. And if I'm not mistaken, it's the first time that all of the quarterbacks will be starting week 1.
Yeah, it's kind of a rush to the rookie QBs. Even Clay Tooney could potentially start for the Arizona Cardinals, and we'll get to the Cardinals after the segment. But this is definitely a really interesting class because I feel like this is going to be a similar situation to the Sam Darnold, Baker Mayfield, and Josh Allen draft, where Anthony Richardson comes in there, shows some really good promise, has some issues to work on, but you're like, okay, yeah, I really see something there. And then my issue with them is like, why are we going to trade Jonathan Taylor? But it looks like if Jonathan Taylor gets traded, the Colts will go out there, bring in Kareem Hunt, who I think would be a serviceable running back with the current core that they have. So if you go out there, give him Kareem Hunt, he'll have Michael Pittman, he'll have Alec Pierce, who I think is definitely better than the weapons Josh Allen had when he came into the league. Better offensive line than Josh Allen had. That defense is always ranked as a high defense. They never come out there and perform. But with Shane Steichen there at head coach who helped develop Jalen Hurts, I think Anthony Richardson is probably going to have the best ceiling and best first year out of any of these guys, because I feel like ultimately he's in the best situation, has the best weapons, and probably has the best coach because Shane Steichen can always give his friend Nick Sirianni a call.
Yeah, I agree. For the Panthers, my worry is definitely their offensive line. Their offensive line looked horrendous in the preseason. It's the preseason, so I'm not going to put too much stock in it, but it's definitely a concern going into the season. Plus, I'm not a big fan of the weapons in Carolina. Adam Thielen is very old. Terrence Marshall got hurt, and you got pretty average personnel otherwise. And then for the Texans, they're in a complete rebuild. Don't have a lot of talent on the wide receivers, although I do like Tank Dell in the preseason. Still a lot of talent there. But for the Colts, they have an offensive line that still has Quentin Nelson. They still have a pretty decent O-line overall, kind of falling apart a little bit. But you mentioned the wide receivers. You mentioned the defense. And I think Shane Steichen, this is the kind of player that he was looking for in the draft. He was looking for someone that was a bit of a project, but also somebody that if he taps into his potential, he could be the next Cam Newton. He could be the next Josh Allen. He could be top 5 quarterback potential.
Yeah, Anthony Richardson can be any quarterback he wants to be as long as he puts in the work and the time. He even made some good throws in preseason where I was like, wow, that was like a really good high point ball, put it right above the defender, only where his wide receiver could get it. So it's like he's not as inaccurate, I feel like, the more game tape I watch him, as everyone is claiming.
Yeah.
And then just with his situation, talk about how great he can be. I flip over to the Texans, though, and I think with CJ Stroud, what they're really going to do is they wanted Will Anderson the most. They traded up to get him and then take CJ Stroud in the draft. So you get your quarterback, you get your stud on defense for the Houston Texans. So I think this defense is going to be really improved. It's really going to be what they're going to lean on. And I think they're going to take a more conservative, run-heavy approach. They're not going to put CJ Stroud in too many situations where he has to push the ball down the field. And they're just going to be like, all right, let's get your reads down this year, and then we'll kind of go through it from there. No, he had a tough preseason game. They're a nice touchdown, though. So I think they're going to be really conservative with him. And then Bryce Young, I feel like probably has the worst weapons out of any of these guys. Miles Sanders is one of the most overrated running backs of all time. And then Frank Reich as the head coach, I feel like that's the worst coaching situation because he didn't prove anything in Indianapolis. His goal there was to, all right, we're going to go at it with Phillip Rivers. All right, competitive playoff game with the Bills. All right, rebuild Carson Wentz. Have one of the most disastrous meltdowns in Colts history. And that's including all of Peyton Manning's failures. And then you also just couldn't get it done last year. It was a bad situation. And you felt like a very uninspiring coach. I'm supposed to believe that he's supposed to overcome a bad offensive line, not a great running back situation, and probably the worst receiver core out of all the young quarterbacks right now. And that's including Clay Tooney.
Yeah, honestly, it seems like it's a recipe for disaster. I will say he does look a little poised in the pocket. I think he'll be solid. My overall sentiment on the Panthers is that I just feel like they're just the epitome of average, where they have average receivers. Adam Thielen's not the man he used to be. respect them to death. I love them, but their receiver core is pretty weak. Their tight end room is very weak. Their running back core, I'm not inspired by Chuba Hubbard and Miles Sanders, even if they paid all that money. Their defense, they got some nice players. Like I like J.C. Horn a lot. I like Brian Burns, but this is a team that I just don't see them. We put them on our list. I think we had them winning 6 games, and it's going to be a tough first year. I just hope that Bryce Young doesn't lose his confidence because he doesn't have the talent around him to thrive, I don't think.
Yeah, I think with Bryce Young, it's more of a situation, survive this year. Don't be atrocious. And I think he's going to have some flashes and give you enough moments to say, okay, I can work with that. And it's like with quarterbacks, for rookie quarterbacks, you at least want the eye test that shows you like some flashes. Like even Kyler, we saw some flashes there. Justin Fields early on, you saw some flashes like, okay, people we didn't see it from, like Sam Darnold, Zach Wilson, Davis Mills, like all these young quarterbacks. So it's like you really should get a good feel out of it. But I think next year is really where they're going to go up there, draft his number 1 wide receiver in the draft, and have to rebuild that offensive line.